Despite spending twice as much, he says, per capita, we're the only major company not to guarantee health care to all as a human right. Here's my problem with that. His solution is Medicare for all. Let's talk about it. It's a human right. Great. So you can get it, but what difference does it make if you can get it if you can't pay for it? Oh, you won't have to. It'll be free. Well, then who pays for it? Nothing's for free. Who pays?
Chris Cuomo reacted to a tweet from Bernie Sanders asking for Medicare for all. This led to Chris Cuomo going on a bit of a rant about healthcare on his News Nation show. He managed to get in lots of both-siderism. I wanted to react to this on my channel because I think it's an interesting topic. We're going to take a look at these clips of Chris Cuomo on his News Nation show. I will share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Healthcare costs are killing us in this country. Wait, no, that's not what it's about. It's about the subsidies for the ACA, and that's about giving people coverage. That's a small piece of the affordability crisis. The access of people who need subsidies to get plans under the ACA are a very small part of the healthcare picture. Did you know that? No, why would you? Everybody's always trying to deceive you. But you got Medicare, Medicaid, then the subsidies to private employers who give insurance to people, and the unions where I get my insurance and many others do, like 160 million of us. Then you have the ACA group that they're talking about. So it's not the big part, but it makes people angry. You're throwing poor people off. That's compelling. They're right about what's wrong. But while the right is on the wrong side of those subsidies, the left knows they would never get what they want this way. Those on the new left want you to be angry at the 8 senators who will probably vote to reopen the government. And I say the new left because the Democratic Party, this matters to you, okay? The Democratic Party is beset by exactly what befell the once grand old party, which is now merely MAGA. Now it is the left, powered by populist outrage about affordability and some other more fringe aspects. But affordability is a real thing, and they're right to be outraged about it in America. They're right about what's wrong. But as was the case with MAGA, after that outrage, do they have the ideas to make it right? Now, I think the answer with MAGA to this point is no. Will this mega movement on the left do better? Takes you to another question. Is it reasonable to accuse the rest of the Democratic Party of quitting because they're trying to end this shutdown before they got a real concession on health care? I say hell no, because it was never going to happen this way. And I'm not being a cynic. I'm looking at history and logic. I've said from the beginning, okay, the Democrats have the right issue, affordability, health care specifically, the costs, but they're doing it the wrong way. Why? The facts. If you go all the way back to 1976, no shutdown has ever yielded any meaningful policy change at the behest of the minority. Fact. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care how they spin it. They are lying if they say anything else. President Reagan, President Bush, they had 2-3 day shutdowns where they got a little bit of a movement on the needle of what they were asking for at the time, but that was different. Okay? It was about presidents versus Congress. Even their own parties were kind of sideways with them with what they wanted. It was not what we've been dealing with in the modern era, which is a very limited competition of one side against the other. And the Democrats never gave the right a win when they started a shutdown. And neither side will reward a shutdown, because all you would then have is shutdowns. If you empower the minority that way, they will constantly attack the majority whenever they get sideways with them, which now is constantly. So they knew it would never happen. In fact, I do think it's meaningful that Thune, he's been saying it for a while, but he said it again tonight. The Senate Republican, John Thune, said you will get a vote on the subsidies. That's good, because when his caucus votes against them and tries to come up with explanation, all you're going to hear, and all these people will hear who care about access, is, wow, you really don't want these people to have this, and you gave a tax cut instead and paid for it with this? It's a bad look. But even that is not the change we need. The ACA subsidies are real, but they are a real symptom of the disease. The problem isn't just coverage. It is cost. The subsidies with the ACA get another 20 million or so coverage, but the prices for them and for 160 plus million more, you and me, are going to keep going up, even if the Democrats get what they want. What do you do about that? Now, here's the problem. This issue is so in the weeds, so complicated, so confusing, that it's really easy to twist it, and it's really convenient to just blame on why it's so bad.
Before Chris Cuomo gets into more of a spiel here, I want to say they always try to make out like this would be so difficult in the United States when every other industrialized country in the world has figured this out. They've figured out how to have universal health care. Their citizens don't go bankrupt if they get sick. It's covered with their tax dollars. The rest of the world has figured this out. There's no reason that the United States can't look at these other countries and pick the best parts that work and make a universal system that is the best in the world. But continue, Chris Cuomo.
And never offer anything close to a cogent fix. I'm telling you, the reason that it costs so much is complicated. Here's the easiest, simplest explanation, okay? Americans spend close to or double or slightly more than double, depending on the country and how you want to measure it, not because our outcomes are so much better, not because we have better care, but because our system allows the private sector to control largely, not exclusively, but largely pricing and administrative process, especially in the private market that, again, represents the majority of us. Why? Well, a little bit of it is because that's how we've always done it. A lot of it is the industry employs a lot of people in every district, and they flood both sides with more money than anyone else, especially once you throw in pharma. And if you want an example of both sides choosing the few over the many, this is the issue. 7 in 10 of us say our health care system needs significant change or a complete rebuild. And our biggest complaint is not, I can't get care, it's I can't afford care. But both sides want that money. So instead, they've just battled over who's to blame, and each side has a boogeyman. And you're seeing a battle of the boogeymen, and that's where this is going to go in the near term, okay? For MAGA, who was the boogeyman? Big government, right? The ACA is the problem. The answer is to give more power to who? Big businesses. You'll have choice. You get to shop, right? But it's going to be the private sector that dominates. Why? Because big government is bad. But they never tried to make the ACA better because they wanted it to fail. And they've never had a better idea except privatize. That's why Trump will talk about anything but this issue. So now it's the left's turn. Why? MAGA didn't get it done. Affordability is worse. It's getting deeper. And they have the outrage. And the outrage is real, more real than any remedies. We're not talking about remedies. What is their boogeyman on the left? Big business is their boogeyman. What's their remedy? Big government. They don't want to fix the ACA either. Why? They want something shiny and new. Isn't that sad that what mattered so much and could have been a step in the right direction is now abandoned by everybody just in favor of the new? So it doesn't seem like you're saying what's always been said. Isn't that sad? So their new is what? Medicare for all, single payer, just like the rest of the world. It's not just like the rest of the world. Single payer is not done that simply really anywhere, and arguably not as well as we would want it to be anywhere, just on that basis. It's an oversimplification, but it makes a point, okay? Change, radical change. Now, what happens if you do Medicare for all, running everything through the federal government? Well, you're going to have problems with all the other stakeholders. unions, big corporations, the insurers, the providers, the hospitals, the doctors, pharma, the insurance companies, the finance guys on Wall Street that trade off a lot of their instruments. And the politicians don't want to deal with that, even though the majority of us want change. So all of that helps the left politically. Why? Because all of those people I just mentioned are the bad guys, right? Remember, which side had someone murder a healthcare CEO? Mangione was a radical lefty who believed big corporations, specifically the insurers, are evil. Now, Bernie Sanders is really the father of this movement. He has never, ever advocated anything like violence. But this idea, when it comes to healthcare and getting the big businesses out of it, that's Bernie. He'll probably be replaced. Why? He's too old. He's been saying the same thing for too long. They're going to want a new face, and they'll get one. But he is the father of fomenting righteous indignation, if arguably without his own workable remedy. Despite spending twice as much, he says, per capita, we're the only major company not to guarantee health care to all as a human right. Here's my problem with that. His solution is Medicare for all. Let's talk about it. It's a human right. Great. So you can get it, but what difference does it make if you can get it if you can't pay for it? Oh, you won't have to. It'll be free. Well, then who pays for it? Nothing's for free. Who pays? They don't have that part of the conversation. Why? Because you're pissed off and you want, and they offer for free. So you like it. So Medicare for all, is that a real solution? Kind of. It's mostly a slogan, which is why the Democrats with Bernie didn't do it when they did the ACA. Well, they didn't have the idea then? Yeah, they did. They didn't. Why? It's too complicated to change. You needed the states involved. You needed the private sector. It was about access. They went to access because it was easier to control than cost. They went to access in the Affordable Care Act. It should have been called the Accessible Care Act because it was easier to get done than dealing with the affordability issue. That's the truth. That is a misnomer, that legislation. The problem is now worse. People want change more. Now, they don't have a better way to make it happen than they did back then. Calling it a right, again, is fine. But it's not about access if you can't afford it once you get the access. He's ignoring how to pay for it. And that over 90% of Americans who get Medicare, guess what? First of all, 90% of Americans are already covered. All right? Yes, more people will not be covered if the subsidies don't go through and the other cuts that the right wants goes through to pay for their tax cuts. And that's bad on them. But what's better for all of us? Access is a thing. But that is the easier piece of affordability. Okay? Now, and a big slice of those who aren't insured aren't the poor who can't get it. They're young employed people who choose not to have health insurance because there's no ACA penalty anymore. And that was a political choice. And then they went to the court and they won it. It's not as simple as to say that the mandate was unconstitutional. It really isn't. It was that they did it through reconciliation. But again, that's in the weeds. And nobody wants complicated. So big business, bad. Big government, good. Medicare for all, good. Great for Twitter. Not once you have to have a real conversation. Why? A huge reason for the success of Medicare is what? Over half of the people eligible for Medicare get what? Medicare Advantage. Why? Privately administered, lower premiums for them, may cost us, the government, the people who have to pay for it, more overall. But studies show they have potentially better health outcomes than people on traditional Medicare. More choice, more add-ons, better management of their situation instead of just fee for service, paying all these different people for different things. Now, the left points Canada is great, France is great, Germany is great. Of the three, Germany is the best. But those healthcare systems, can we do that? They're 100% single payer. They're not really 100% single payer. They're having add-ons, and it's happening more and more. Why? Because they had smaller, healthier, and populations that were more homogenous and easier to insure. Now that they're growing, diversifying, the systems in the UK and Canada specifically are facing more and more problems. What can be fixed is how we pick winners and losers in this system. Because that's what you're doing. You're picking who wins and who loses. There's a really simple way to lower costs for all of us. This is true. I've vetted it with people who actually know this is their business. Okay? We are literally one law away. Did you know that? A single rule. If Congress were to pass a cap on health care costs that nobody gets paid more than we pay through Medicare, It would not only change a lot of cost structure right away, but it would create pressure that may change even more for the private sector cost, where 160 million of us get it. Two issues with it, okay? The second one literally makes me sick. But first is the biggie. All the stakeholders that I mentioned, they're coming after you. The lobbying, the unions, the hospitals, the doctors, the insurer. Everyone's going to say they're going to go out of business. The margins are too small. You can't do this to us. We're going to fire all these people in every one of your damn districts, and you're going to pay for it. All those who win in this system and what they mean will be part of the punishment. But here's the other reason. Here's why it really won't happen. All right? And look, I hope you take the time to listen to this a couple of times, okay? I know it's been long, but I'm telling you, I've been studying this for years. I've been frustrated by this for years because they keep playing you. Not really lying to you, but they keep playing you and making you angry about things that they have no intention to fix because they want the money from the people who caused the problems. But the reason they won't pass this one law that would have a cascading effect, sure, there'd be problems, there'd be losers, but you, if you care about costs, would likely be a winner. But it won't happen. Why? The two parties don't want to give the other side credit for a win, even if it's better for all of us. What the two sides want most is not change. They want advantage over the other side, not the advantage of the country overall. The politicians prefer the division. They prefer outrage over problems than fixing the problems. I'm happy to have the conversation with anybody who wants to, but I will never lose on this proposition.
Okay, so I wanted to let that pretty much roll so you could hear all of it and then give my thoughts mostly at the end. Chris Cuomo isn't wrong about everything that he says here. He's wrong about most of what he says because he's got to get his both-siderism. He's got to be a centrist through and through. The parts that I agree with are mainly him talking about access versus affordability. It's that idea of, yeah, Lamborghinis exist. So, a politician can say, well, anybody can buy a Lamborghini, if they work hard enough and make enough money. You in theory have access to a Lamborghini, but can you afford a Lamborghini? Most of us cannot. So we have the same thing in our healthcare system where it's like, yeah, you have access. The Republicans say all the time, anybody can go to the emergency room. Sure. And then you get hit with a gigantic bill. So Chris Cuomo is right about that aspect. I think he's a little bit right about that neither side wants to give the other one a win. That plays into, but I think that's a small part. Again, that gives you both sides are equally bad. The Republicans are bad. The Democrats are bad. Who's really to blame here? Who's really the bad guy here? Where I would disagree is a lot of his framing is right-wing framing. He talks about, it's free, but nothing's free. Everybody knows that this is, nothing's free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. That's every Facebook debate I've ever seen. That's morons on Twitter. If you say, hey, Medicare for all, well, how do you pay for it? Nothing's free. Yeah, we never have this conversation about the next military budget. That's going to be $1 trillion. You're never going to have Chris Cuomo on TV saying, where does this $1 trillion come from? Who's paying for that? Everyone knows that it would come from taxes. And right-wingers love to act like we're taxed to death in the United States. We have a top tax rate right now of 37%. In the 40s through the early 80s, we had a tax rate anywhere from 70 to 90%, a top marginal tax rate. Back then, corporations accounted for about 1/3 of all taxes. Now, less than 10% of taxes are paid by corporations. All of those expenses get passed on to the middle class, basically. So we could, raise taxes some in the United States. We could actually require corporations like Amazon, who often pay zero taxes, to actually pay some taxes. And we could have a little bit of an increase at the top, maybe have a 40% tax rate instead of a 37% tax rate. It doesn't have to be 90% like it was at one time in this country, a time when the greatest middle class in the world was ever built. So there's that. He also brings up that I see all the time, well, these, Germany, Canada, these other countries, they're homogenous societies, which to me always just sounds like racism. They're just saying, well, these are white countries. And the United States has, we have more minorities here, which I don't know percentage-wise exactly what the breakdown of those other countries are. But what does that really mean? Somehow somebody who's not white, if they break a bone, their bones are different? What are Chris Cuomo and I don't think he's trying to be racist here, but that always sounds like a racist far-right idea to me. The way I would turn this around is to say, hey, if these other countries like Germany and France and Canada can do this, why can't the United States, the richest, most powerful country in the world? I have a good friend who lives in Spain. He says, we've figured this out. Why can a small country like Spain do this, but a big, rich, powerful country like the United States cannot? Which I agree. I think the United States can do anything they want if they want to do it. Chris Cuomo also talks about the ACA. Well, they did the ACA because it would be too hard to do anything else. No, they did the ACA because they wanted the insurance companies to be involved. The centrist, corporatist Democrats wanted the insurance companies to be involved so they could continue to make a lot of money. Chris Cuomo leaves that part out. They didn't not do Medicare for all because it would be too hard. They didn't do Medicare for all because they didn't want to. They didn't want to take the profit motive out of the system because they're corporatists. Chris Cuomo wants to act like Bernie Sanders' wing of the party has all this power, when Bernie Sanders, AOC, the squad, they're a tiny minority of the Democratic Party. The corporatists, the centrists, the establishment Democrats control everything. There is no real left in this country that has any power, but the centrists like Chris Cuomo love to make out like there is. There were lots of people on the left that said, hey, at least you can do the ACA, have the corporate insurance companies involved and all that, but offer people a public option, allow people to buy into Medicare. That would have been a compromise. Instead, Obama and the Democrats went with what was a Republican plan implemented by Mitt Romney in Massachusetts. So the compromise would have been a public option, but they didn't want to do that either because, again, the left has no real power in this country. So ultimately, Chris Cuomo does the thing that right-wingers always do. I'm not saying Chris Cuomo is a right-winger, he's a centrist, but that right-wingers always do. Well, we can't do this, and we can't do this, and we can't do this, and we can't do this. But they never offer a real solution. He didn't really offer a real solution here. One other thing that he brought up that's Republican framing, which was something that I just thought about for the first time today. Right-wingers love to act like they care about the insurance company employees. So if you say, oh, let's do Medicare for all, well, what happens to all the insurance company employees? They're all going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their jobs anyway through AI. All the people that are denying the claims and, you call in and you wait for an hour to speak to somebody. That's, what do we got left on that? 5 years, maybe a decade? Before virtually all of those people are replaced by AI. So they're not going to be able to use that excuse anymore, Chris Cuomo and the right-wingers that he's siding with here. So let me know what you think. What I'd really like to hear from is, I know I have a lot of subscribers in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and anytime I talk to people in other countries about healthcare, they always say, yeah, it's not perfect here. We have issues, but it's still better than what the United States has, which I agree with. But if you're in another country outside of the United States, let me know in the comments and let everybody else know how you feel about your healthcare system in your country compared to the United States, because we get so much propaganda about this from people like Chris Cuomo. And then, of course, right-wingers on, I do videos all the time about CNN with Scott Jennings and people like that on there. You know, you have to have the free market. You can't have a single payer system. But if you're in a country with a single payer system or there's anything different than the United States, let us know in the comments what you think about it. I'd love to hear. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. Let me know, do you agree? You might think that Chris Cuomo is absolutely right here. Do you agree with Chris Cuomo's views on all this, or do you agree with Bernie Sanders and me that we need Medicare for all? Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.